Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today we're doing news and week in review, diving into a few assorted news pieces, a topic of the week, all the videos of the week and that stuff. But first, starting off first and foremost with a small update to Ninth Circle. Ninth Circle was a crowdfunding campaign I covered in this week's To Back or Not to Back, and I made a mistake, which is why I want to make sure you know that I made a mistake so I can correct that mistake, so I can talk about it as many times as possible. No, seriously. Basically, Ninth Circle, crowdfunding campaign, I made a big deal about how the game, doing the To Back, Not to Back, I made a big deal about how the campaign seemed a little overpriced for what it was, and it seemed like it was basically just a retail copy, and I somehow completely missed on the page that they had unlocked a full expansion, and they had unlocked additional upgraded miniatures, upgraded cubes to meeples or miniatures or whatever it is. They basically upgraded the components and unlocked more content for the game, and I completely missed it. Completely missed it. Make no mistake, in my To Back or Not to Backs over the years, I have missed things here and there, but usually the things I miss are small peripheral details. This was bad. It was bad. It was a mistake. It is a disservice to the crowdfunding campaign. I am sorry for it. There's a certain sense of responsibility when you sit there and you talk a lot about certain things. It's no different than if you review a game and you review it negatively. That's already bad. But if you review it negatively because you missed a rule, that's worse. And in this case, I missed it. And so I want to make sure, A, if you're in any way interested in Ninth Circle, please check out the campaign. I'm not saying you should get it or not. That's a totally different conversation. But please check out the campaign. There's a section on stretch goals that you can go ahead and take a look at the things that are added. There are, again, a bunch of content added. This is not the price point of a retail game. I just want to make sure you know. I'll be talking about it again in my To Back or Not to Back. I want to make sure you know what the game actually has. I did the campaign and you a disservice for missing something that is that big of a deal. And so I apologize to you, I apologize to the creators, and I'm sorry. And with that, we're going to dive into the week in review, but yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. There's no, I feel just weird going and with that, but moving to the rest of the video, we're going to move on to something else, which is a giveaway winner, which is the first time I'm doing a giveaway winner 2 weeks in a row, I believe, on this one. But this is the final giveaway winner in the whole six Lacerda games and Hop Market Victorium conversation. This is the final one. We are giving away Lisboa. Lisboa is the final game left from the six Lacerda games that I had, and you can go ahead, if you are the winner of this one, the winner of this game is going to be Ingrid Boswell. If you're watching this, Ingrid Boswell, you are the winner of Lisboa, the final game in this giveaway. As usual, frequent reminder that this is for hitting 50,000 subscribers, by the way, in case you're wondering. I might be doing a separate giveaway thing at some point, I'm not sure, but for right now, this is the one I announced a while ago. So Lisboa is going to Ingrid Boswell. Reach out to me via email at alex@boardgameco.com. Please do not respond to any comments and all that. Again, YouTube's actually been pretty good about not having all the giveaway spam comments show up. Instead, you have the, here's how I make $750 a day while giving some inspirational quote. I still block those, but they're not nearly as bad. But either way, that's basically the conversation. Ingrid Boswell, you have won Lisboa. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the news. The news, starting off the bat with Nemesis side quest over here. So Nemesis side quest, let me just see if I can guess. No, back. Nemesis side quest over here. This is basically a game that's a collaboration between Awakened Realms and Board and Dice. At least I assume it's a collaboration between Awakened Realms and Board and Dice because it's using the name Nemesis. I know I work for GameFound. I genuinely have no idea about this stuff from the Awakened Realms side or all that because they really are two different companies. This is the first time I was finding out about this. They have a set of puzzles and games and things and adventures. It's like a puzzle situation. If you go back to the game page over here, Nemesis side quest. If we go here, Captain Jessica Kowalski's nope. Side quest Nemesis is a group of puzzles and enigmas by the designer of the Escape Tales series, but now in the Nemesis universe. That seems pretty cool. I like the idea of this. I like the collaborative aspect of, this whole thing. But either way, SideQuest Nemesis is the first thing. But then from there, we have Steamforged Games to bring 4 new projects exclusively to Kickstarter. Steamforged Games signed an exclusivity agreement with Kickstarter for their next 4 projects. You can read through the full, press briefing over here. Obviously, they currently have their Monster Hunter World Iceborne campaign is currently going on, and they announced an exclusivity agreement with Kickstarter. So there's not that much more in this, honestly. There's basically saying, hey, we have 4 projects coming up. They're going to be on Kickstarter, and that's basically it. I think the first one is Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I believe, but I could be wrong. I think that's the first one. I think there's 3 more after that. But there's that. And then over here we have more Steamforged Games news, which is specifically over on Dicebreaker. We have Dark Souls Elden Ring Board Game Maker cuts 1/3 of employees in recent restructure. Basically, this is a talk about how Steamforged Games did a bit of a restructuring and cut some of their employees from the team, like a reasonable enough that it's making this article. Now, I will say a few things here. Number one, this article was released right before the crowdfunding campaign, which I don't know. I don't work for Dicebreaker. I'm not accusing them of anything. What I will say is, I don't know if the timing of the article is specifically timed to coincide with the campaign for maximum impact, or it happens to be when they got the news. Either way, the news is relevant. Make no mistake. Either way, the news is relevant. But it is that I'm always a little bit more mindful if something drops at a specific time frame. But past that, and I'm aware of that, how that it's not meant to be a thing about anything else. I'm sorry about that. But I will say that there's a few things you should know. The first is that as someone who backs games in general, I cover a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, and I want to be as straight up as possible so you understand all the conversations, the biases, all those things. But as someone who covers a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, understand that covering, and I talked about this in my last week, to back and not to back, but if you back a lot of games, then yes, a headline like this is something you should know, so you should be informed. It does not mean that Steamforged is in trouble, nor does the fact that it doesn't mean it's in trouble, that doesn't mean it's safe either. It could be either one. You have to act with your own due diligence to whatever degree. My personal belief is that this is not a problem and does not reflect any degree of concern for you backing Steamforged projects. But as I said in my to back or not to back, my personal belief does not constitute some sort of guarantee of your money. So just understand that. I do not believe this is a problem. Part of the reason I don't believe it's a problem is Steamforged Games does have a strong retail line in general. They have a lot of retail lines. They have a lot of products. They have a lot of strong IPs. This is not a company that's surviving on crowdfunding alone. Far, far from it. That said, anytime a company cuts employees or restructures, it is cause for concern, and the nature of the consecutive projects you have in crowdfunding does mean that it still is it should be a red flag. It doesn't mean you shouldn't back things. Just that's the full conversation around this. From there, and by the way, and just for context, so yeah, it's worth saying this. It's worth saying this. So for context, over the years, I've done a lot of anti-fear-mongering. Whenever there's been a company with an issue of any kind, whatever that is, I remember when CMON had like their stock exchange issue a while ago, and people lost their minds, and I was like, people, CMON is fine, CMON is safe, like this is not an issue. And then with Mythic Games, people cried foul about their constant, next crowdfunding project, and I was like, people can have multiple crowdfunding projects in the queue, and it's not a problem. I can't speak to the future, or what will happen in the future. What I can say is I generally don't fall into the fear-mongering, and as we've seen from just those two examples, sometimes it seems that that's right, and sometimes it seems like that's wrong. When there's cause for concern, there's cause for concern. It doesn't mean you should go running for the hills. And I generally will usually fall on the side of it's not enough of a reason to panic. That's usually my assumption. That doesn't mean that there will always not be a reason to panic. Sometimes there is a reason to panic, and we won't necessarily know which times that is until too late. So that's it's worth being conscious, and it's worth making decisions accordingly. And never back something if you're not okay losing the money. You're putting money out for something that's going to come down the road. So just be fine with those conversations as you go through it. Moving on, we have Ticket to Ride, a decades-old classic board game, maybe getting a major update. This is referring to a bit of a little teaser trailer there was. They had on Days of Wonder had a teaser trailer that all but screams that Ticket to Ride Legacy is coming, which I, of course, will be signing up for because I enjoy Legacy games. So we'll see what happens to this one. But Days of Wonder, a Legacy game, was likely coming. I'll have the link to the article down below from Polygon, but that's the situation there. And then lastly, we have over here, speaking of teasers of sorts, we have Come On with whatever this box is, and by the time you watch this video, you might know what this box is. Someone says Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid. Why are so many people saying, okay, so here's the deal. We have a box on the page. I don't know why people are saying it, but we have like 7 people saying Metal Gear Solid. That looks good. What else is there? What else? Let's go through it. All I'm seeing is Metal Gear Solid, miniatures game. This is the Metal Gear Solid. Why are so many people saying this is Metal Gear Solid? Under the C number, I can make out life isn't just all guessing. Nope. The writing on the other box says, the writing on the other box side of the box says, life isn't just about passing on your genes. We can leave behind much more than just DNA, which is a quote from Snake. Interesting. Okay, there we go. So people have done the detective work, and we have Metal Gear Solid coming. Also, by the time you watch this is probably something you know already. So that's what we have as far as the news of the week, which means we're going to go ahead and dive into the topic of the week. The topic of the week is a slightly less fun one. Topic of the week is as follows. So, and now it's time for the topic of the week. And yes, that was a cut. And when we get to the topic of the week, you'll see why it was a cut. Most things for me are one take. Some conversations are trickier. The topic of the week is the missing piece of news. The missing piece of news, which is the Aeon's Trespass Odyssey, Into the Unknown, and Quackalope news this week. That is the last piece of news that I didn't talk about. It's going to be the topic of the week. And yes, I did a video this past Sunday sort of peripherally talking about it, but not really getting into it. And the not getting into it is a bit why I want to talk about it loosely now. And I'm still not heavily going to get into it. I'm not going to get into a giant situation right now. I want to do a small few clarifying points because It's hard. The whole entire situation is hard. For context, if you don't know what's going on with Quackalope and Aeon's Trespass Odyssey, you can check a million different sites or videos or anything. It's all over the place, and it is something that's being talked about a lot. I will not heavily go into it right now, but I will be recommending at least one video for you. What I will say is, please give me the grace in this video, in past videos, in the past year, or in forums, please give me the grace of understanding the complexity of what it is for me to address this issue. And the reason it's hard and complicated is because Jesse and I were genuinely very, very close friends once upon a time. I believe we're friendly now. I hope we're friendly now. It's possible that the nature of the video I did on Sunday or the video I'm doing today, it's possible those things mean we're not friendly, and that's possible. But we shifted away from being friends and shifted towards being friendly over the past year and a half. It's been it's not necessarily an immediate change. It's definitely been a change that's been present for a while. And that means it's hard. It's hard to talk objectively about an issue when you have opinions, but you also have someone who was very close to you once upon a time. And it's complicated. It's just inherently complicated. I don't want to hurt Jesse, but I also don't want to be. It's hard. It's hard. I don't want to be silent. I don't want to hurt Jesse. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just conflicted. I'm conflicted is what it is. Is what it comes down to. Is I'm conflicted in the best way to approach it that does everyone the correct justice. That does you, the viewer, the correct justice. That does me the correct justice. That does Jesse the correct justice. I don't have perfect answers, and I may misstep along the way. And I'm sure I have and will misstep. But I'll say a few things that I will get into. First of all, I'll say that I think the current situation is not as negative as it is being presented. I think it's bad, don't get me wrong, and I disagree with some of the things done, and I'm not going to get into the how and why. I am of the opinion that the whole thing, the way it went down, I think there were communication issues on both sides. I think that there could have been better handled on both sides, and I think there's some degree of fault on both sides. Honestly, if you really want a video that I highly, highly recommend that really kind of, I think, strongly mirrors my thoughts on the entire situation, The King of Average did an incredible video on the subject that I highly recommend. And if you're someone who doesn't want to watch The King of Average's videos because, if you have a negative opinion of The King of Average's videos, because I'm someone personally who I've been watching Michael, The King of Average. I've been watching him since I got into crowdfunding board games, and along that journey, I've had times where I agreed with him, disagreed with him, where I appreciated his content, didn't appreciate his content. I've been on the whole journey and spectrum of that. I will say that if you watch his recent content, I think it really has done... I think it's been a very big shift. I think he has managed to find that niche in which he is both catering to the audience he currently has that wants a very critical voice in the board game space, and he is a critical voice in the board game space. I also think his recent content has shifted a lot more towards well-researched, well-covered, more balanced presentation as opposed to leaning a bit more towards the frustration and outrage. Genuinely, if you are someone who thinks I wouldn't watch a King of Average video, I think you might be in for a pleasant surprise. It's a long video. It's like 50 minutes long. But I think if you're looking for something that most accurately mirrors my thoughts on the situation and is incredibly well presented, I think the King of Average's video on this entire subject is worth watching. Highly recommend it. I'll also say that regardless of your opinion of the situation, even if this is the worst possible travesty that has been committed in the board game space in who knows how long, which it's not, but even if it has, depending on who you are, I ask you to examine the comments you've left anywhere, in any form, in any structure. Whether it's Board Game Geek, whether it's Reddit, whether it's on his videos. There is some truly toxic stuff being thrown at Quackalope that I think is out of line, regardless of what you think of the situation. And I'm not referring to discussing it. Discuss it from today until tomorrow. Be critical until today until tomorrow. You're allowed to discuss anyone, myself, him, anything. You're allowed to be critical and discuss things. There's a difference, in my opinion, between being critical and personal attacks. And I think there have been a tremendous amount of personal attacks on him, on Shira, on the crew. I think there's a difference between disagreeing with somebody, hitting the unsubscribe button, doing whatever you need to do. There's a difference between those things and attacking somebody. And I understand, even if you're frustrated, ask yourself whether your actions align with who you want to be as a person along the way. And many of you, by the way, they're totally fine. But there are people out there, and I don't know if they're the people who are watching this video. I don't know who they are, but whoever you are, ask yourself if the actions you are taking align with the person you genuinely want to be. understand I've made missteps my entire life, and I will continue to make missteps. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying anyone's perfect, but I think there's so much piling on right now that it's easy to become part of the mob as opposed to moving away from it. I'm not going to defend anyone past this aspect, because on a personal level, I do disagree with the things that happen on both sides. And so I'm not here to defend, but I also think that it's not necessarily as bad as it's presented, and that you definitely shouldn't pile on no matter what. As far as people saying they're wondering, well, what happened? What's this horrible secret that happened that you and Jesse are no longer friends and all that stuff? Frankly, I'm not going to get into that. I don't think it needs to be anyone's business. I will say that it is definitely not nearly as bad as anyone wants to think it is. It doesn't have to be a whole drama. I've said for a long time that the polite answer I gave along the way while I was trying to avoid having to talk about this at all, is that we have different approaches to the way we deal with our content, the way we deal with our industry, and we just shifted apart because of that. And that is the accurate answer. That is an accurate answer as far as what went on. It's just a polite version without getting into the details and the nuances. What does it mean a different approach? What does it mean a different... I don't need to get into that. I'm certain, without a doubt in my mind, that there are people in the industry who disagree with the way I do things in the space, who disagree with the way I, whatever it is, cover Kickstarters, talk about games leaving my collection, pick a subject, pick whatever it is. I'm sure there's people who don't want anyone to ever have a paid relationship with the publisher at all, and I do have paid relationships, just they're very clearly disclaimed, and they're very clearly separated, and they're minority of the content. I'm sure there are people who can find any number of things to disagree with me, and that's okay. And to that end, I don't feel the need to get into what my personal differences were and what led to a shift or whatnot. It's not some huge dramatic issue. It's just there were differences, and there were shifts, and there was a... Again, excuse me as I try to balance how to publicly talk about an ended relationship with somebody who is a close friend. I don't think there's a right way. I think there's only wrong ways. If I don't say anything, I'm hiding things. If I do say things, it's airing dirty laundry. It's unnecessary. The only reason I said anything today, the only reason I have this as my topic of the week, is because the amount... I can disagree with things that have happened while disagreeing as well with how some of things are being handled. I think it's a lot in terms of the way things are being thrown. And I try to aim for neutrality. Like my last video on Sunday, I tried to aim for as neutral as possible. There was one part where I issued a correction, which inherently a correction is not pure neutrality, but my video is basically saying, hey, I don't have anything to do anymore, and it is what it is. And there's a bunch of conversations around my policies, and then I did mention at one point that I disagree with something Jesse implied once, that the reason we have less to do with each other is because I took a job at GameFound, which is simply not the reason, and I did issue that as a correction. And I try to aim for neutrality as much as possible on this issue. Again, it's complicated. I don't always... I'm sorry this is a little more wishy-washy for me. Again, I already had to pause and reset on this one because which I don't usually do, but I recommend watching the King of Averages video. I recommend gathering the information you can and trying to make whatever decisions you want. I'm not saying what you should do and not do. I don't make your own decisions. Decide what you care about and decide what you don't care about. But along the way, as you do, hitting an unsubscribe button is a whole lot easier than leaving some nasty attacking message. And that's not a call to unsubscribe in the slightest. I just mean you can take your action that says what you care about without having to attack anyone along the way. That's the topic of the week. I almost want to refilm this again. I still feel it didn't. You see, that's an interesting... we're going to move on. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next conversation. And again, apologies if I did not handle this in a way you personally agree with. I don't handle it in a way that I personally agree with. I just don't see a way that I do agree with, and I'm choosing the thing that I think is the least of an issue. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and move on. Moving on to what I played this past week. So, what I played this past week, we have a few things. I managed to play Isle of Cats with all the expansions. With the four modules, the new ships, the beasts, the kittens, and the ghouls. I think those are the 4 modules. I played in all those configurations, got a few games in. I wanted to try it out. Had a viewer come down who wanted to share the game and talk about it and whatnot, and play the game, and play a bunch of games. And so I managed to dive into that. Overall, my opinion of Isle of Cats has not strongly changed. I like the various modules, I enjoy them, and I would almost always play with some or all of those modules. Also, I still think Isle of Cats is a very good game, and not one that I feel the need to personally own in a giant world full of tons of polyomino and drafting games. It's beautiful. And I have, by the way, and like Isle of Cats Explore and Draw. To me, it gives me the same general feeling, but in like a quarter of the time with no setup, no teardown. I think Isle of Cats is a little better, but I think Isle of Cats is like 98% there with so much less work and anything else. But either way, I think Isle of Cats is still a good game. I understand why it's so well loved. It's just not a game I personally feel the need for. From there, we also played through. I played through Oneirum, part of the Oniverse over there. I really enjoy that one. I've been continuing diving through all the modules there because that's a game that I never really finished playing through all the expansions, and so I've been continuing to dive through all of the expansions. I think I have one left right now. After that, I'll probably be doing a 12x12 review on Oneirum. It's a game I've played easily 20 plus times. I really enjoy the various configurations, and I have pros and cons on the various modules and what my ideal way to play Oneirum is, because I think my ideal way kind of stops after like 3 expansions. And then from there, it's just a question of mixing it up for the sake of variability. I don't know why I'm telling my review. Let's say the review for the review. But then from there, lastly, is Quali. Quali is a game from Gigamic Games, I want to say, that falls into a whole line of like wooden pieces and cool wood production value and all that. And Quali is a 2-player game that is very reminiscent of Tak, but I'll have a review on it at some point, but I need to play it more first. But my biggest problem with Quali right now is that too many of my games have ended in a draw. If you're playing Quali, let me know if that's happening to you. I find too many of my games are ending in a draw. Not all of them, but too many of them, to the point that it feels a little anticlimactic to play that game. I'd personally rather play Tak right now at the moment, and I'm curious. I'm curious what your opinion on Quali is if you are someone who has played it. That's what we have for what I played. Apologies for not having more on that. It's I'm still thrown off by the last topic and whatever. Moving on, we're going to go into the week in review. The week in review starting with the various videos from this past week, starting with Saturday, where Devin did a preview for Disrupt. Disrupt over on crowdfunding, you can check that out. It's over on Kickstarter, you can check that out. An asymmetric game of board game related stock companies, sort of. Later on Saturday, I had a review for Turing Machine. Turing Machine I gave a 3 out of 5. I think it's brilliantly designed. My personal interest in playing it is actually fairly low. I think it's a beautiful, amazing, logical puzzle. But as far as my rating scale, I will never play that game again, and I will not lose a second's thought. I like it. I think it's great. If you want me to play it, I'll happily play it. But I just don't need to play it myself. So that goes into the 3 out of 5 category. The 3.5 is where I start having regrets and start wishing, like, I wish I kind of was playing it, and I don't. I think Turing Machine is excellent for some people. I think it's got a solid solo puzzle, solid multiplayer puzzle, and ultimately there are other deduction games I'd rather play. Later on Sunday we had my stance on recent issues, which was my whole video talking about, not loosely, the first minute was talking about the specific situation, and the next like 30 minutes was giving me an opportunity to just be as transparent as possible on every single possible aspect I could of bias and of paid coverage, of trying to give you just as much transparency as possible. I've done this before, and I will do so again. It is going to be a constant conversation on the channel. I don't know, maybe I'll do a State of the Union like once a year video where I just talk about like, here's what we currently do, here's our current stances, walk in as informed as possible. It's a conversation that's always going to have to be repeated because inherently part of the conversation is there's people who are the viewers, who are there every time, who see the videos, they're constantly there, they know who I am and what I do. But then there's always people who are finding that video and they pop in for this, and so constantly we talking about it is going to be a thing. I did have somebody reach out to have a conversation with me about the nature of bias. Talking about like how they don't feel I fully captured bias within this conversation, which I don't disagree with. Meaning, I think there are elements of bias that I didn't fully get into. There's a video I did like 2 years ago on bias where I went through like every possible bias I could think of, I'm sure I missed some, but I didn't go into every possible bias I could think of. One thing he was trying to focus on is the inherent nature of the fact that even me having any relationship, paid or unpaid, whatever it is, having any form of relationship with a publisher does expose, like the fact that I have Apex Legends on this table means that I benefit from this coverage of Apex Legends. Assuming I haven't actually played it yet, I'm hoping to cover it before the campaign ends. We'll see what happens. But Apex Legends is on my table. The fact that I have a relationship with a publisher means I benefit from coverage on a popular IP, and that bias is present. So I'm slightly more incentivized to give something a positive review, to curry favor with the publisher. He's 100% right. That is a definite bias. 100%. I don't have an easy way around it. If you want the answer I can give, is the way I kind of half handle that bias is something I already talked about in my video, which is when it comes to something like a prototype, a non-prototype I can buy if I really need to, and I have plenty of games at all times and I'm not worried about a lack of coverage, but I do agree that when it comes to especially popular, hot Kickstarter projects, having that relationship is a factor. And I've covered it to a certain extent that I already said if it's below a 3 for me, I won't cover it for a prototype. And that does, to a certain extent, shelter myself from, you know, trashing some game and losing a relationship. Ultimately, if Apex Legends is a 3 for me, I'll tell you it's a 3. And I'll risk the fact that I lose a connection and network. That's something that I know for me. You can't know that. You can't know in your heart that I'm going to talk completely accurately as much as possible and put a prototype whether I liked it or not. Although I have. I mean, you can know that I've done it. Again, that's a factual conversation. You can look at past coverage. You can look at offhand Dark Quarter, the Dark Quarter from Lucky Duck, a publisher I have an existing relationship who works with me, who sends me things, and I sat there and gave the Dark Quarter a 3 out of 5. I gave Bard Song a 3.5 out of 5. There are definitely times where I've given games mediocre coverage. That's a fact. You can't question that. That's just a fact. The bias is still present. I just will always do the best I can to navigate it. But his point was that I didn't fully cover and encapsulate that relationship. He's not wrong, so I feel I'll talk about it now. Why not? Just like, I want to embrace the conversation as much as possible. It doesn't mean I'll be able to cover everything perfectly all the time, but I want to embrace the conversation. From there we have Monday. Monday we had 2 back and not to back, going over a bunch of crowdfunding campaigns, including Apex Legends, which I believe is redoing their pledge levels. They're doing a whole thing to completely approach the campaign, but there are a bunch of campaigns, including multiple. There are 3 video game campaigns. We are definitely seeing a shift in the board game space and the video game space trends, like, you know, moving together. We have Icefair, we have not Icefair, I don't know why I said that. We have Iceborne, that's why I said Iceborne, Icefair, sounds similar. We have Iceborne, we had Apex Legends, and we had Dead Cells as well. We're seeing so many video games turning into board games, and it's very. We'll see which ones are amazing and really hold your attention, but there's a lot of cool things happening in the space and a lot of campaigns currently going on. Then on Tuesday we had an Into the Godsgrave playthrough. Speaking of Lucky Duck, we have Into the Godsgrave playthrough. Going through that one, I'll have first impressions on that game later. I'll say I definitely like it, but I also have concerns and wonderments just because it's an app-based game, but I do like the game. I personally don't love app-based games. I tolerate app-based games. Then later on Tuesday we had an escape room and detective-style game roundup, just covering like 6 or so games from that genre, just saying, hey, here's my thoughts on these particular types of games within the genre. If you like Unlock and X and you're looking for other games, just a brief thoughts on, you know, Dexscape, or I think did I do Detective or Dexscape? I mixed up one of the two of them, then a bunch of other them as well, but that was later on Tuesday. Then lastly on Tuesday we had a review for Legacy of You, another 3 out of 5, and that started off high for me. I really liked Legacy of You when I first started playing it. The more I played it, the more it shifted downwards for me, ending up as a 3 out of 5. I liked the game, but I kind of felt that my experience was very much on rails as I continued to play it, and so while I think it's brilliant on the one hand, I think they balanced it almost too well on the other hand, resulting in a slightly on rails experience for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and again, I want to say, like, because I've noticed, as a viewer, I know that I'll see content creators who I'm like, well, why do you keep reviewing dungeon crawlers if you don't like dungeon crawlers? Why do you keep reviewing this? And the reason I say that right now is, like, I am someone who has run up against a wall at Garfield Games. I love Hadrian's Wall. And I always want to love their games, and somehow the games like always land adjacent to me. They are well received, so take into account they are well received games. I don't know what it is. And again, Legacy of You, I thought Legacy of You was going to be another Hadrian's Wall for me. I thought it was going to be another one that broke the cycle, but it hasn't. I'm still interested in their games. I'm still interested in everything Garfield puts out, and I'll keep playing them. But I feel a little bad at a certain point. If I haven't liked them, why do I keep playing them? It's because they're always interesting, they're always compelling, and they're always just adjacent to what I like. And so I feel they're for me. Like, it's not like I'm playing a genre I don't like. It's a genre I do like. Like, something about, I don't know. Either way, I just want to be, their games I loved. Legacy of You is, like, highly, highly rated by many, many people. For myself, it started off highly rated. The more I played it, less so. Then Wednesday. Wednesday we had 7 Wonders Duel, a 12x12 review, going through 7 Wonders Duel, Agora, Pantheon, all the expansions. Just as usual, my 12x12 reviews try to encompass playing the game in as many different possible states as possible, as many possible different player counts, although as a 2-player game, I only played this game at 2 players. But just going through it, I love 7 Wonders Duel. I think it's fantastic. I think the expansions add significantly to the experience in different ways, and you can watch my video for more information about it. Past that, later on Wednesday, we had our weekly live. The weekly live with Devin and Meg and myself, going through, well, in this case, the topic of the week was talking about what makes us go ooh in a game, like what really captures your attention and pulls you in and makes you either interested in buying it or keeping it or playing it or all those things. And then also, of course, we had our usual game show and the various games we wanted to talk about as well. It's chaos over there. I recommend, if you like a little bit of chaos, I recommend the weekly lives. If you like content less chaos based, then I don't recommend the weekly lives. Anyways, from there we have later on Wednesday. Lastly on Wednesday we had Conquest Princess Fashion is Power. Did I do the thumbnail for that? I think I did the thumbnail for that. I'm just thinking like right now. Either way, Conquest Princess Fashion as Power. That is going to be another gameplay. This one of Conquest Princess Fashion as Power, which is a cooperative experience for 1 to 4 players. We'll be controlling 4 characters as you rescue to save the Tiara, which is like the Time, Intergalactic, and Space something. I don't know. There's a very cool acronym for it. But either way, you're saving the Tiara, the spaceship you're on. You're dealing with whatever various things are being thrown at you. It is a very, very challenging, very puzzly game. This is an upcoming GameFound campaign. I should note, I work for GameFound. I am the CMO of GameFound. Take that into account. This is a fun game. The graphic design doesn't pull me in quite as much, but the actual game itself it's very good. It's very good. I highly recommend it. I'll have first impressions, not first impressions. I'll have a review coming at some point. I play this game plenty. My Into the Godsgrave is going to be your first impressions because I only played one scenario. They only had one scenario. But Conquest Princess, I've played like 4 or 5 times by now, so I'm happy to call that a review. From there, Thursday we have 13 great gateway games. This is a recap of a bunch, not recap. This is a coverage of a bunch of great gateway games that I really recommend. Why 13, you ask? I don't know, because I couldn't stop at 10. I tried stopping at 10, I couldn't. So it's 13 great gateway games that went up on Thursday, which means to Friday. Friday's 2 videos. We had a Deluxification video covering a bunch of things. We covered Yido, the just big box version of that. We covered a bunch of smaller, like we covered some One Sharp Joe token trays. We covered Stellar Prince, just a bunch of various things. You can check out that video in the Deluxification video. And then later on Friday, we had an unboxing for Lords of Ragnarok, which, yeah, and now I'm trying to think. So now I have this all in my head. I'm pretty sure I said I work for GameFound in that video. I'm gonna have to double check that. I need to double check. This is the conversation of the week. Give me time to adjust. Anyways, that was Friday. So unboxing for Lords of Ragnarok. Game looks beautiful. Take a look at that one. I covered it a while ago. But either way, game looks beautiful. And that brings us to today. Today we have the following. We have, first of all, we have we have Dungeons, Dice, and Danger. We have a review for that going up today. And then we also have the Into the Godsgrave first impressions going up later today as well. As far as next week, we have a bunch of things. We have the State of Crowdfunding video that was supposed to be this last Sunday, but it got bumped, so it's this Sunday instead. Then we'll have best 10 games you can play on Board Game Arena together with Professor Meg, and then I'll have some Marvel Zombies gameplay content as well as like 12 other videos. So a whole bunch of things coming up next week. As far as the games on the table that I hope to be playing into, I got Castle of the Sea showed up this week, and I really want to dive into that one. We have Vengeance Roll and Fight, which I played already solo, but I'm hoping to play this one multiplayer. We have Explorers, which I want to dive into, another roll and write. We have Clever Cubed, another roll and write. Today is roll and write week, and then of course Apex Legends, which I really plan on tabling as soon as possible. I hope to have coverage up for you of this one before the campaign ends, but I need to get moving because this only just showed up. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.